I'm recording this right now, and I've recorded different questions of this worksheet in different periods. So if you want, you can look at the other videos to see other questions if you struggle with them. Right now, let's just go through this worksheet. The front side of this worksheet has these instructions. It says write an equation in slope-intercept form of the line that passes through the given point and is parallel to the graph of the given equation. So the bottom line is they give you a point. They give you a point. Here's a point, a location, a coordinate. And they tell you that your line is parallel to this given equation, okay? So it may be as easy as understanding that this equation, the slope of that equation is -3/4. And if they're telling you that your line is parallel, that means same slope. So your m value is going to be the same as that m value. So you're going to indirectly get the slope of -3/4. And then once you have a slope and you have a point, you could either plug it into point slope form, or you could stick with y equals mx plus b only. I've already explained 3 on a different video. So I'm going to jump to, let's go to one of the hardest ones on this section, number 10, right? Again, the instructions say that they want you to write a slope-intercept form equation. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. That's the equation that they want. And they give you a point, which is a x1, y1 value. And they indirectly give you a slope by telling you that your line is going to be parallel. Sorry, having problems here. Parallel to this line, okay? So what does parallel mean? Same slope. So they're indirectly giving you the slope of your line. But the question is, what is the slope of this line? We don't know yet. Why not? Because this is in standard form. This is an ax plus by equals c, right? And in that standard form, there is no m. So what we have to do is rewrite this in the slope-intercept form. So I need to get y by itself. So I am going to subtract 9x, subtract 9x. I'm going to rewrite this thing, 3y equals -9x with a positive 8. I almost have y by itself. I need to get rid of the multiplication of 3 right in front of the y. That's dividing by 3, dividing by 3, dividing by 3. I'm going to have a new slope-intercept form equation of y equals -9 divided by positive 3 is a -3. And of course, it has the x right next to it. And plus the b value of 8 divided by 3 you can't do. So I would just leave it like a fraction. But the bottom line is, this is the same equation as the original, but this one original was in standard form, and now this is in slope-intercept form. So why the heck did I take this equation and change it to slope-intercept form? Why did I do that? Because I know now my slope. You see, I want to write an equation of y equals mx plus b. In order to do that, you need 2 things. You need the slope and you need the y-intercept. If you know your slope and you know your y-intercept, you'll be able to plug in your slope right there, your y-intercept right there, and you'll be able to write your equation in slope-intercept form. So they gave me a standard form equation, and they tell me, or they told us that our line is parallel to this one. So I first changed it to slope-intercept form so I could see their slope. Their slope is -3, which means that my slope is what? -3. Why? Because they told us that it's parallel to this one, and parallel means same slope. So my slope right here is actually the same exact thing, -3. Now, I still need a b value. What do I really have here? I have a slope and I have a point. So a slope and a point. So what form naturally comes to my mind? Point slope, because I have a point and a slope. Now, you don't have to go this route, but I see a point and I see a slope, so I'm going to write point slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m parenthesis x minus x1. And when you use point slope form, I highly recommend that you rewrite it with blank spots. Y minus y1, but notice I left it blank, equals m parenthesis x minus x1. Notice that I left it blank. That way I could easily plug in my x1 value of -1 right here where the x1 is supposed to be at. So I'm going to put a -1 right there. And I'm going to take the y1 value of -4 and plug it in right here on the y1 spot. So I'm going to plug in a -4 right there. And last but not least, I'm going to take the m value that I indirectly acquired by knowing that it's parallel to this guy. So my m is the same as that one, which is -3. And I'm going to plug in that -3 right there where the m is at. And now I have a point slope form equation. The only thing I could do is change those minuses to plus plus. That way it looks a little bit nicer. So if the instruction said write an equation in point slope form, it would be y plus 4 equals -3 parentheses x plus 1, and that would be my answer. But the instructions did not say point slope form. They said slope intercept, which obviously slope intercept does not have parentheses, and it also has y by itself. So of course I need to get rid of the parentheses, and I also need to get y by itself. I need to get rid of this plus 4. So how do we get rid of parentheses when we have something multiplied out here in the front? You actually have to distribute. So let's do exactly that. Distribute -3 times x, that's -3x. -3 times 1, that's -3. Bring down the equal sign, bring down the y plus 4. And to get rid of that 4, to get y by itself, all you have to do for the final step is subtract 4, and you will have your final slope-intercept form equation, which is y equals -3x minus 7. That's y equals mx plus b. That's what they asked for. If I were to graph this equation, it would cross the y-axis at -7, and I would go down 3 and over 1, and that would be the graph of my line. And that line, if I were to extend it in both directions, for sure will cross through this point, and it will never cross this equation because it's parallel to it. Anyway, I hope we understand that. If you do, fantastic. If you're like, man, I hate point slope form, I don't want to use point slope form, I just want to stick with slope intercept. They asked for slope intercept, I want to stick with slope intercept. Okay, let's try that. So we're done, all right? But I'm going to explain how to do this whole thing in an alternate fashion, right? So you find the slope, changing it to slope parallel to, changing it to a slope intercept form. You see that slope, it's going to be that m value because it's parallel. And if you want to stick with y equals mx plus b, you could simply plug in this y value of -4 where the y is at. So imagine that. Let me plug the -4 in place of the y. So instead of y equals, I have -4 equals. And you could take the m value of -3 and plug it in right there where the m is at. So you have a net equals -3. Now, it is m times x. So it would be good to put a multiplication dot or parentheses or both, and then plug in your actual x value of the given point, which is -1. Plug in -1 right there. And of course, you don't know what b is. There is no b value. And that's what we're actually trying to find. So you would just leave it like that, plus b. So by us plugging in the y, the m, and the x, we have an equation that could be solved for that missing value b. So all you got to do is simplify the equation, do any math possible, and right here you could do -3 times -1. And of course, -3 times -1, that's +3. There's an equal sign right here. There's a -4 over here, and there's a plus b over here. To get rid of that 3, to get b by itself, we want to solve for b, right? To get rid of this 3, we're going to subtract 3 and subtract 3, and we're going to end up with -7 equals b, b equals -7. So we now know that b is -7. We have the m, we have the b. Now we could actually write it in y equals mx plus b. That would be y equals -3x minus 7. And that's the answer. Let me write it. Y equals mx plus b. Y equals -3x minus 7. It's the same one that we found over here. It was just found completely different, right? In a different way. Now, I don't know. It's totally up to you. If you feel more comfortable with just y equals mx plus b, that's cool. Now, if you ask me, I would actually choose point slope. Why? Because once I have my slope, and once I recognize that I have a point and a slope, I would go straight to point slope form. Plug it in, simplify it, change it to slope intercept. That's what I would do. That's what I like doing. But if you want, you could just stick with y equals mx plus b, plug in the y right there, the x right there, the m right there, solve for b, get the b answer, then take your m and your b and just write your equation in y equals mx plus b form. You might think that this is easier. So it's totally up to you, whatever you feel more comfortable with, that's what you want to do. And that's what we're doing on the entire front side of this worksheet. Sound good? So the entire front side, it says that your equation is parallel to the given equation. All right, so what is your slope going to be on number 2? Your slope is going to be the same one as this one because it's already in slope-intercept form. So your slope is going to be -4, right? Your slope right here is going to be parallel, which is going to be the same slope as this one. Oh, your slope is going to be 1. But on the one we just did, it was not in slope-intercept form. On the one we just did, that was in standard form. So you had to work with it first to get y by itself so you could actually see the m value. And then you could be like, okay, parallel means same slope, so my slope is -3 also. Now on the back side, go ahead and flip it over. On the back side, it's the same instructions. Write an equation in slope-intercept form, and they also give you a point, but this time they tell you that your line is perpendicular to the given equation. And perpendicular means opposite reciprocal m values, opposite reciprocal slopes. What the heck does that mean? That means you're going to change the sign and flip fraction on your slope. So when they tell you that your line is perpendicular to the given equation, well, you got to find out what the slope is of that equation that they give you, and then you got to change the sign and flip it to acquire your slope. That's what perpendicular means, opposite reciprocal slopes. So this one, for example, I'm not going to do this. I already did this one in a different video, but right here, the slope, because it's in y equals mx plus b, you could see their slope. What is their slope? It's -1/3, which means that your slope will be what? +3/1. So +3 would be your slope right there. That one's really easy because it's already in y equals mx plus b. All you got to do is remember opposite reciprocal slope. That way you could get your slope and then work from that slope and the point and keep going. But let's go to a challenging one. Sorry, I'm doing all the challenging ones in this class. Let's go to number 19. That one looks fun. Okay. Why is this fun? Because this equation is in standard form. You can't even see the slope yet. So you got to get y by itself first so you could see the slope. So let's do that. Let's get y by itself by getting rid of that 4x. So we're going to subtract 4x. Hopefully you're following along. I only do to one side, do to the other side. Subtract 4x. That cancels out. My new equation, 7y equals -4x plus 6. Final step would be to get rid of the multiplication of 7 by dividing by 7, dividing by 7, dividing by 7. Cancels out. Y equals -4/7. We have an x plus the b value, 6/7. You can't really divide it. You leave it. So all I did here was change this original standard form equation into slope-intercept form. Why did I do that? So I could identify the m value. The m value of the equation that they gave us is -4/7. Knowing that my line is perpendicular to that line, I know that my slope is going to be what? If it's perpendicular. Yeah, it's going to be positive because you change the sign and you flip the fraction 7/4. Good job. So positive 7/4 is our slope. Okay. So at this point, we have a point, x1, y1, and a slope. So what I personally choose to do when I have a point and a slope is to go with point slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. I write it every time I do this problem, right? And I recommend you write that form over and over. It'll help you memorize it, right? And when you use it, please always use it with blank spots. So just rewrite it. Y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1 close parenthesis. Notice that I left it with blank spots because I'm going to take this x1 value of -4 and plug it in right there where the x1's at, -4 right there. And then I'm going to take the y1 value of 1 and plug it in right there where the y1 belongs. So I'm going to put in a 1 right there. And last but not least, I'm going to take the slope 7/4 and plug it in where the m is at, 7/4 right there. Now, this is my point slope form. The only thing I need to do is change any minuses to plus plus. And if they asked for it in point slope form, I would be done. But they didn't ask for it in point slope form. They asked for it in slope intercept form, which means y equals mx plus b. This is what they want. But obviously, y is by itself here, y is not by itself here, and we definitely don't have parentheses, so we don't want the parentheses here. So in order to change this to look like that, we have to get rid of the parentheses by distributing the fraction, and then getting rid of the -1 by adding 1 to both sides, right? However, that's going to require some work. It actually, like if this were an ugly fraction, like let's say 7/9, right? It might be worth getting rid of the fraction and multiplying everything by 9 if it were a 7/9. But the reason why I'm looking at it and I'm like, I'm going to distribute this fraction is because the 7/4 times 4, if you put that 4 over 1, when you distribute, the 4's will cancel out and the fraction will disappear. So it actually works out really nicely on this one. So this is actually not one of the ugliest questions on this worksheet. It works out pretty good. Let's distribute the 7/4. That is 7/4 times x. That's exactly that, 7/4 times x. 7/4 times 4, you could say, okay, 7 times 4 is 28, 4 times 1 is 4, and then 28 over 4 is 7. Or you could say the 4's will cancel out, and you're going to have a 7. Either way, you're going to get a plus 7 right here. Bring down the equal sign, bring down the y minus 1. So let's get y by itself by adding 1 to both sides. Plus 1 cancels out, plus 1. And ladies and gentlemen, we're done. We have y equals 7/4 x plus 8. There's my slope-intercept form equation of the line that passes through that given point and is perpendicular to this equation, okay? Now, once again, that's what I prefer. Whenever I see a slope and a point, I go for point-slope form. And I plug it in, and then I change my point-slope form to slope-intercept, even if they asked for slope-intercept. But if you don't like point-slope, this is an alternative way of doing it. We're going to go to this y equals mx plus b, and we're going to plug in everything that we have here. We're going to plug in the y value of 1 right there, so we're going to have a 1. We're going to plug in the x value of -4 right there, so we're going to have a multiplication of -4 right there. We're going to plug in the m value of -7/4 right there, or +7/4, I'm sorry, right there. And then we have the plus b. So if you plug in your m, your x, and your y, you could now solve for that missing value b. And of course, the 4's will cancel out, or you could multiply through. It's totally up to you. You could put the 4 over a 1 and say, okay, 7 times -4 is -28. 4 times 1 is 4. And when you divide -28 by 4, you will get a -7. Of course, the equal sign comes down, the 1 comes down, and the plus b also comes down. So you have a new equation that reads 1 equals -7 plus b. Final step, add 7, add 7. You'll get 8 equals b. B equals 8. Now that you know that b equals 8, and you have the m and you have the b, you're able to write it in y equals mx plus b, which is obviously the same exact answer as we got over here. It just depends if you want to stick with just slope-intercept form, or when you have a point and a slope, you plop it into point-slope form, and then you change the slope-intercept. Either way is totally fine. It seems like a lot of work. That's because I'm explaining it in two different manners. It's like doing twice the work for each question. It's totally up to you. If you like just y equals mx plus b, use it. Or if you like point slope form like me, use it and then just change it to slope intercept. I don't know, should we do another? Or should we stop right there? Let's do one more. Okay, last one. Let's go to the last question on this thing. Last question on this thing. Well, they give us a point, x1, y1. They tell us they want us to write an equation in y equals mx plus b form. And in order for us to write that, we need both an m and we also need a b. If we know the m and we know the b, we'd be able to write our equation and we'd be done. They don't give us an m. They don't give us a b. They give us an equation and they tell us that our equation is going to be perpendicular to this equation. Problem is, I don't even know what the slope is because this is in standard form, ax plus by equals c. And there is no m involved in standard form, so you want to rewrite it in y equals mx plus b so you could actually visually see the m. So you want the y by itself. You don't want this 5x. So we're going to begin by subtracting 5x, rewriting negative 6y equals negative 5x with a plus 9. Finally, I'm going to get rid of that multiplication of negative 6 in front of the y by dividing by negative 6, dividing by negative 6, dividing by negative 6. My new slope-intercept form equations, y equals, a negative divided by a negative is a positive, but I can't divide 5 by 6, so it's going to stay 5 over 6 with an x. And positive 9 divided by a negative 6, you can't really do that. You could say that a positive divided by a negative is a negative, and you could actually reduce 9/6 by 3, and it'll give you 3 halves. And there's your equation in slope-intercept form. So the whole purpose of taking the given equation in standard form and changing it to slope-intercept form is for us to identify that m value. Why do we want this m value? Because we know that our m value is going to be what compared to 5, 6? Our m value is going to be what compared to 5, 6? If we know that this on this half of the worksheet, it says that our line is perpendicular to this line. So perpendicular means what? Change the sign, flip the fraction. So what's my slope going to be? Negative 6 over 5. That's my slope, negative 6 over 5. Okay? So now that I have a slope, negative 6 over 5, and a point, I am going to go for point slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. And when I use this, I always rewrite it with blank spots. Y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1 close parenthesis. The y1 value, as you can see, is 5. Plug it in right there. There's going to be a 5 right there. The m value is negative 6/5, so you're going to plug in a negative 6/5 right there. Negative 6 over 5. And then the x1 value is negative 3. You're going to plug in a negative 3 right there. And of course, the minus minus changes the plus plus. So here's our equation in point slope form. However, they want it in slope intercept form, which means that you want y by itself, and for sure, you don't want the parentheses. So we're going to get rid of the parentheses first. Now, I don't know about you, but I think a lot of us would rather not distribute negative 6/5, right? I mean, maybe you do want to distribute negative 6/5, but I'd rather not. I mean, it'd be a lot easier if I just had like a negative 6 right there. If I distributed a negative 6, that's easy. So I could get rid of the fraction. I could get rid of that divided by 5 by multiplying everything by that denominator 5. That'll cancel it out. And what I do to one side, I have to do it to every term. So the 5 also here, the y also by 5, everything by 5. So I want to have 5y minus 25 equals negative 6 times x plus 3. How did I do that? I multiplied everything by 5. Now, if you're thinking, wait a minute, why? You're saying you're multiplying everything by 5, but you didn't mess with the x, you didn't mess with the 3. That's true. Because whatever I do to this outside guy, it's like if I did it to the inside guys because of the distributive property that has to happen. Okay? So that's why we don't mess with the inside of the parentheses. Whatever you do to this outside guy, it's like if you did it to the inside guys. So again, you multiplied everything by 5, even though you didn't actually mess with these guys. All right, so now we're going to get rid of the parentheses and get y by itself, and we'll be done. So getting rid of the parentheses, distribute. Negative 6 times x, negative 6x. Negative 6 times 3 is negative 18. Bring down the equal sign. Bring down the 5y and the minus 25. We have a green equation with no parentheses. That's great. All we need to do now is get the y by itself. We're going to get the y by itself by adding 25 first to both sides. We're going to rewrite this thing. You're going to have a 5y left over equaling negative 6x. Negative 18 plus 25 is 7, positive 7. And now for our final step, we're going to get rid of the multiplication of 5 by dividing everything by 5. So your final answer is going to be y equals negative 6/5 x plus the b value, which happens to be 7/5. And there is your slope-intercept form equation. And how do we do that? We took the slope that we found that was perpendicular to the given slope of the given equation, and then we used the point to go with point-slope form, and then change the point-slope form to slope-intercept. Now, if you don't want to mess with point-slope form, here is your alternative way of doing it. Again, it's one or the other. You don't have to do both, but if you did both, that's more practice, which will make you better. So let's go back and take this m value of negative 6/5 and put it right there. So we have our equal sign, and then we have the negative 6/5 in place of m. We need to multiply it by x, and x, we're going to plug in the x value of negative 3 right in there. And we're going to plug in the y value of 5 right over here, where the y is at. So you have an equation, don't forget about the plus b. You have an equation that reads 5 equals negative 6/5 times negative 3 plus b. So we need to solve this thing. Multiplying fractions with numbers is easy. Just put the number over a 1 and then multiply the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom. Negative 6 times negative 3 is a positive 18. 5 times 1 is 5. Bring down the plus b, bring down the equal sign, bring down the 5. Now, if you're like, I don't want to mess with any fraction, I could get rid of any fraction by multiplying everything by the denominator. In this case, multiply everything by 5. That times 5, and the b times 5. That'll temporarily get rid of the fraction. On the left side, we have 25. We have equals 18 plus 5b. So we have 25 equals 18 plus 5b. Let's get b by itself on this side by getting rid of the 18 first. So we're going to subtract 18. Subtract 18. That's going to give us a 7 equals 5b, which really means 5 times b. To get rid of that multiplication of 5, you divide by 5, and you'll get 7/5 equals b. That means b equals 7/5. So if you know your m and you know your b, you'll be able to write your equation in y equals mx plus b form. Y equals m is negative 6/5. You have an x right next to that. And then you have the plus b, which is plus 7/5. As you can see, it's the same exact equation as we got over here with our point-slope form situation. It's up to you, whichever makes you feel better, that's the one you go with, okay? So for the rest of the class, we're going to work on the rest of this worksheet. And if you need help, let me know. And over the 3-day weekend, if you're working on this and you need help on other questions, like I said, I've done other videos explaining other questions on this worksheet in other classes, and they'll all be uploaded on Google Classroom.